Welcome back to the channel. So I wanted to take this opportunity to discuss a couple of stories that are doing the rounds in the football world. So as always, if you do enjoy the content, please consider hitting that subscribe button. Let's get into it. First story is Nico Williams. This is a player who has been strongly linked with a move to Barcelona in particular. And why not? He's a Spanish international. He's best mates with Lamine Yamal. It does make sense. Or does it? Because if you think carefully about this, he's a left winger, and I know that some people may just gaslight you into believing that he plays on the right as well. But look at the number of times that he's lined up on that side, because it's not a lot. He is definitely most productive from the left-hand side for Athletic Bilbao. So why are Barcelona in the market for a player in that position when Rafinha has just had the best season of his career, to the point that he's one of the favourites for the Ballon d'Or? It doesn't make sense. Now, I understand the need to bring in a forward because you've got that dynamite front three, but if any one of them gets injured, if they're playing too many minutes, you may just see a little bit of a drop off in form, so it's useful to be able to rotate them, which is why the likes of a Marcus Rashford, who's also been linked, makes a lot more sense. This is a guy who would be, well, he's more used to sitting on the bench, let's be honest, and you would be able to bring him in. It's the bright lights of Barcelona. No doubt it would give him a shot in the arm, especially when you think about his career. He did little bits this season, didn't he, for Aston Villa? But you can imagine that happening. He could slot in up front for Lewandowski. He could also do a job on the left-hand side. But with Nico Williams, he comes in to start, surely, especially if you're paying around 60 million euros, as is the reported fee, because yeah, he's good enough to play for this team. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense in my eyes. You've got other teams that are also linked, the likes of Bayern Munich. And that's a lot more interesting because they do need a left winger. He would go straight into that side and you'd have him on the left, you'd have Kane through the middle, you'd have Elise on the right, and most probably Musiala in behind, as usual. And it makes a lot of sense. On the other hand, you've got Bayern Munich linked with alternatives such as Luis Diaz, another name that was linked with Barcelona. It seems like those two teams are very closely linked in the profile of players that they are looking at. But in my eyes, if you're Nico Williams, are you really going to Barcelona? Only if you know something we don't. Maybe Rafinha's days are numbered, or maybe they're thinking about Lewandowski and that they can make something work with a false nine. Maybe Rafinha plays centrally, but I'm not sure if that's the way to get the most out of Rafinha, particularly when we've seen him have this amazing season from the left-hand side. And then you look at Real Madrid. Would he go to Real Madrid? No, not unless Vinicius leaves. Could Vinicius leave? Potentially. Would I be open to that happening? Yes, I've said this on multiple occasions. I do think that Vinicius really does need to shape up. He needs to make massive improvements because this is a guy who is self-confessed idol as Cristiano Ronaldo and he's nowhere near him. Absolutely miles off it. Ronaldo, the guy that guaranteed you 50 goals plus a season. When's the last time Vinicius got close? Never is the answer. Let's move on. Napoli, because they're quite an interesting story. So Napoli are in the market for a forward, which is incredible because if you don't follow football too closely, you might think, well, they've got Victor Osimhen. This is a guy that half the world seems to want. Why are they in the market for a centre forward? And it's because the relationship between Napoli and Victor Osimhen is well and truly broken. It's irreparable, and he spent last season on loan in Turkey. He did really well over there, by the way, so he does still have a lot of interest, particularly from the Premier League. And it seems that Liverpool in particular are becoming more and more interested in this particular deal. And it's an interesting one because Liverpool are trying to offload certain players as well, the likes of Darwin Núñez, for example. And it seems that Saudi Arabian teams are a little less keen recently, but Napoli have thrown their hat into the equation. They've shown some interest in taking Darwin Núñez to Italy, and it may just work. It may be the change of scenery, the change of league, which is able to bring out the best in him. And I do believe that there is a player there. Think about all of the attributes that he's got. I know that he misses the odd sitter. Of course he does. We all beat him over the head with that. But on the face of it, he's fast, he's powerful, he's strong. He's got all of the attributes that Antonio Conte looks for in a centre forward. Let's be honest. Let's look at the forwards that he's had over the years, the likes of Lukaku, players that have really flourished under him. And it's very possible that he looks at a player like Darwin Núñez and sees someone capable of filling that particular mould. Lukaku himself is a very controversial figure. There are some people that think of him as a bit of a donkey, a bit of a not necessarily having the finest touch in world football, that sort of thing, misses the odd sitter. It does sound familiar. So maybe there is something that can be done there. And I know that this type of deal doesn't tend to get done, the swap deal that you read about. And these reports are suggesting that Liverpool offload Chiesa, who they apparently also want, alongside Darwin Núñez, and they get Osimhen in return. But it has happened. Doesn't happen often, but it has happened. The most recent one that I can think of was Barcelona and Juventus, and that was a deal between Miralem Pjanic, who at the time was quality for Juventus. He fell off a cliff when he went to Barcelona, and Barcelona had a young lad, Artur, the young Brazilian, and his career nosedived in the same way. It didn't work out well for either of the parties. It didn't work out well for either of the parties, but it was a way of not having to give over any money. You just trade your assets, essentially. So maybe it is one that can get done. Finally, Mark Guehi. There are conflicting reports here because with Kwanzaa set to sign for Bayer Leverkusen, there's money there and you do need a centre-back. So do Liverpool pull the trigger? Do they bring in Mark Guehi? Well, it may well be down to the player at this point, and it may well not be as clear-cut as we first thought, because by all accounts, Mark Guehi wants assurances of first-team football, and if you're Liverpool and you've got Konate and Van Dijk on your books and you're playing four at the back, he's going to be a rotational player, which is not what he reportedly wants. So can this deal get done? Well, if you want to play devil's advocate, let's look at it this way. Konate doesn't have the best injury record, so you'll get plenty of minutes in the team. Maybe Konate is set to leave in the very near future. He's only got a year left on his contract. He doesn't seem to be too committed to Liverpool. It's not beyond the realms of possibility that Liverpool pitch it to Mark Guehi and say, do you know what? Bide your time. Come a year, you will be starting alongside Virgil van Dijk. And look at the long-term plan. You will be leading this defence because Van Dijk will not last forever. He may well get phased out. He may well start to rotate. He may well retire. And you could find yourself, Guehi this is, the leading light in that Anfield back four. It's not a bad prospect, is it really? Rising up through the ranks, becoming club captain at Crystal Palace, winning an FA Cup, getting a dream move to Liverpool, and then within a couple of seasons, you're leading the line. It could happen. Anyway, let me know your thoughts regarding these stories, and if you did enjoy this content, please consider subscribing to the channel. Take care.